Good afternoon again. My name is Michael. I'm presenting for HTC. My colleague Kusha sits in the very back. If there's questions, he will help me out. I'm not too sure about the procedure, but still happy new year anyway. Right, HTC Horticulture Promotion Council. It is basically an organization which is pretty young, about from 2000, and growers, growers and exporters coming together to transform the industry. In a more, of course, economic, because it's private sector, social, and business oriented. As I said, pretty young. HTC was formed in 2000. There used to be, some of you remember, Horticulture Promotion Council, which is kind of the, I don't know, grandfather or something, uncle, aunt, but HTC, as we have it now, was only formed in 2000. It is very much, the membership is very much export, horticulture export producers. It was formed based on an initiative of the Minister of Agriculture. We're working with development organizations, financial institutions, and marketing bodies. Next. HTC's mandate is very much to support. Can you click on?
Yeah, right.
The one with the nice coffee. And obviously, I have to put a coffee picture somewhere. So the mandate is really inclusive growth. Transformation of the sector, sustainable and inclusive green growth. I think this is really very much the key points. Inclusive means in this context that we want to integrate all sectors of agriculture. As you may know, or very likely know, horticulture at this point in time is very much large scale dominated. So it really has to get more farmers from different sectors into it. The main role initially was representation and advocacy. The initiative was really, a lot of the horticultural growers went to the Minister of Agriculture having complaints about labor laws, about legislation, about import, export regulations, and then the minister said, look, enough is enough, we want one voice speaking for the sector. And that's very much how HTC came into being. So it's that lobbying partnership with government. We're working very closely with government. And then having MOUs with various partners. Next, please. Right. This is very much the members, and if you can, as you can see, it's very much associations, fruit growers, export flower growers association, avocado growers association. So the associations representing horticulture, which in Zimbabwe include flowers and, excuse me, doesn't like me, which in Zimbabwe includes flowers, horticulture, plantation crops. So it's the associations. We are representing about 70% of the horticulture export in the country. And then the farmers' unions are members, and then there is individual members as well. This and HTC is very much part of the government's horticulture recovery and growth plan. So we have these components. One is really the important one, strengthening, institutional strengthening, and then enabling policy and regulatory framework. As you know, export sounds very, what's the word, tempting, but it's actually very complicated in the setup to do export because of internal and very much because of external regulations. And I think then that's the components there: production, strengthening, infrastructure, domestic market, export markets. Domestic market, I think, is very important, specifically in the horticulture sector. A lot of the vegetables, for example, in Zimbabwe are imported, while we could easily produce it ourselves. So there's really quite a lot of scope in that. Financing, funding, we all know that in every sector, but in agriculture and in plantation crops in particular, funding, bank funding is a big challenge in this country, so we're working on models there. And then, of course, sustainability. So for us, really, the foundation is that we need smallholder development, and this is not, or not only certainly because of any developmental approach, it is really to utilize the potential. In this country, as in the region, smallholder farmers own the largest part of the land. A lot of the land is actually quite fertile, so if we really want to utilize the full potential of the sector, we have to find ways and means of getting smallholder farmers on board into commercial farming. Production-based development, that means more farmers who produce, but of course those farmers that produce need to sell somewhere. It requires infrastructure and logistics, obviously internal transport, electricity, water, but also external export. I said financing, investment. We are in contact with a lot of our export markets. We are talking very much to the European Union, the UK, Middle East about kind of demand. They're working together with AMA and Zintrade in really marketing Zimbabwe better as it has been. Our problem in Zimbabwe for most crops is the market is there, but we don't have the product. I mean, the export market is very much there, but we don't have the product. Sustainability and value addition. So it's really that smallholder farmers can, through an off-take or through a hub, we get to that later, be linked to canning, drying, export facilities. Next, please. Man, this thing doesn't like me.
Should we try the other one?
It just doesn't close. The sector growth plan, this is the famous horticulture recovery and growth plan. The target is start from the bottom, that by 2030 the horticulture sector is producing 1 billion revenue. Without looking too much in the past, but Zimbabwe earned about 125 million before 2000 without tea, coffee and nuts. Currently it's about 18 million including all those crops. So really 80 million to 1 billion is quite a target. Now, I don't know whether that's visible from the back, but we have been talking to all the sectors, like you see on the, let's see on the left, the different associations, looked at their growth plan, targeted hectarage, the output. So the 1 billion is quite feasible, but it doesn't need $1 billion investment. This was presented at our investment forum in October. This is shared with the ministry, shared and confirmed by the Ministry of Agriculture. The little problem is to find the 1 billion, but we're working on that too. So the potential of the sector is simply gigantic. And as I said, this is from the associations, and quite a few of the associations, CETROS, certainly varies, are working on that. And given funding, the expertise, the markets, external markets are very much there. As I said, there's the little problem of the 1 billion investment. I get back to it later in detail, but I think this is very important for any business to grow. The enabling environment, everybody talks about it, but very few people actually know what it means, or if they do know, see how it's implemented. And it's really a combination of enablers, people that do things, which is very much the farmers, the regulations, which in this country often very, very tricky, very tight. That's why we see more and more people going informal, because then there is no regulations whatsoever and no tax. But again, we need to see that specifically export is very difficult, or basically impossible to do informal unless you take your tomatoes over the border to Zambia or Mozambique, which does happen. But besides that, if you want to export into the European Union or anywhere else, you have to have a formal business. And the policies need to be aligned. So it's really the policies, the regulations. In this country, we have in many ways, in many sectors, and I think a number of the colleagues will confirm that, over-regulation. And we have a lot of institutions that charge farmers for certain services. If those services then appear or help or not, is a different story. And by the way, HDC doesn't get any public money. We are purely membership, so the members decide whether they feel it's worth their while to give us money. We have no authority to deduct anything, like some of our colleagues. So we're working very much on the market system. One of our areas we promote, and again I go to that in more detail, is the hub and spoke model. We basically want to link smallholder farmers to a larger off-taker. In that context, there needs to be some incentives, one way or the other. Because if I'm an off-taker, it's simply so much easier for me to buy from 1 or 2 big suppliers than buying from 1,000 small suppliers. And somehow the authorities need to recognize that and need to help me making that step, buying from 1,000 smaller farmers. We're working currently, and it's in everybody's mind, there was the Doha conference, not Doha, Dubai conference end of last year about climate funding. There's a lot of money out there. For us, it's important that we link viability and sustainability. So using climate smart methods to increase productivity so we can have a viable but still sustainable system. And very important, link private sector, farmers organizations, and hopefully development partners. Good agriculture practice, CSA, as I said, it's there to increase productivity with a lower footprint. And done correctly, it's very feasible. Just a list of what we do. As I said in the beginning, okay, spelling, but you know what I mean. Ministry of Agriculture will do the single entry point. So that's the service for our members. The members come with their queries and we take them to the Ministry of Agriculture. We have regular meetings with them. That works quite well, of course, within the given context. We talk about global, local gap. Uschi is the expert there. If there's any questions, he will help me out. Quality management, business strategies, off-take arrangement facilitation, like we're looking at farmers, at off-takers, at hubs potentially, and if they have a market, if they have potential, link them with outgrowers. So matchmaking, if you like, to what I call it, training. I mean, most of our crops, value chains are very specific, really needs to be a lot of training, and if it comes to export, it's even more. I just highlight one more here. It's the European Union, sometime last year, came out with a new deforestation regulation. So basically, for your crops, you have to prove that you didn't chop down forest after 2020, otherwise you're not allowed to export anymore. Now that's going to be very tricky, and we have to see how we really do that, because like in coffee, for example, where we have 1,000 smallholder farmers, now somebody has to go to all these farms and say, hey, you haven't chopped down trees, and needs to get it verified, and needs to get it accepted over there. And how are we going to do that, and who is going to pay for that? I have no clue. There's other value chains, livestock, for example, high on the list, and soya and a few others. I think it originates from some of our colleagues in Latin America, but of course, if they want to impose this in Latin America, then they have to impose it everywhere else. So that's, for example, a real big problem where we have to look how we do that, because if they implemented one farmer with one bag of coffee that is not verified as not forest destroying rather, would spoil the whole export. So it's really kind of a big problem. Just on the last line, that's how far we go. There's another European Union regulation that basically says the export scanning, the export modalities at Harare Airport are not compliant. So therefore, the export companies need to buy new scanners and need to implement the scanners and all sorts of things. We're discussing with the European Union now how we can support these companies to put scanners so the berry guy, for example, can scan their product properly, so it's accepted in the European Union. So it's really well beyond fun. Quickly to what we call inclusive production model, the hub and spoke, and then we're also working on the funding model. I think most of you know hub and spoke. However, it's interesting how different definitions are. The Minister of Agriculture has a very different definition from ours, and other organizations probably have yet again different organizations. So for us, it's a collection point, okay? But with a market link. So it's not a warehouse somewhere that buys tomatoes and stores them there and then they rot in the warehouse. And for us, it's basically, if it's not an off-taker, it's not a hub. There could be production hubs and extension hubs, but in our context, it's an off-taker with market links that we classify as a hub. Buying, aggregating point that has outgrowers, and those outgrowers in the citrus sector, there's outgrowers who are 50, 60, 80 hectares. So it doesn't really mean you have 1 hectare only. It can be very, very big. It's just that you bring your product to somebody else who then does something with it and sells it on. It is very important, and it's a little bit, of course, overlap with contract farming agreements. There is some sort of agreement. I know what I'm meant to be delivering, you know what you get, and there is some sort of communication, and there is agreements on timing, there's agreements on some sort of pricing system. The beauty of it's working, and it has been working, it is working in Zimbabwe, it's working in many other countries, is really that you can now integrate farmers who otherwise wouldn't have market access into the market, and eventually into high-value export markets. The hub and spoke is a very generic model. It's very important now, if you talk to specific people, to adjust it to the specific model. So we're working with the coffee sector in Eastern Highlands. Their hub and spoke model is very, very different than there's a canning factory just outside Harare, or the citrus guys in Bybridge. They're all hub and spoke, but again, case by case is very different. It's very important that you really look with the farmer and with the outgrowers and see what is best for my situation. The beauty really is if it's working, if it's set up properly, it is a stable link. I know where I'm selling to, and I know somehow what I'm going to get based on some sort of formula. And it creates income and planning security. I know that I can plant a hectare of tomatoes or whatever, and it will be sold. I need to take this off. The model, okay, so the hub is the market. And the hub, like in the wheel, is the driver. So this is connected somewhere to the gearbox, in our case, the market, external or internal. That drives the thing. Without the hub, it wouldn't drive. So the farmer supplies some product, agreed, and then the hub pays the farmer. But those two spokes wouldn't hold the wheel. So in order to have it strong, we have to have additional complementing service. Compliance, I mean, not in order of importance. So sustainability, technology, of course, very, very important. We're talking often about rather sophisticated crops. Capacity building for the farmer, but also for the hub. Extension, finance. The more spokes you have, basically, the more stable your wheel will be, but the heavier it will also be. So you have to really find the compromise of the right setup. And again, the size, the number of spokes, the size and color of the tire, that's the specific setup, case by case. So what we're doing at the moment, we are mapping and having quite a number of the existing hubs. There's quite a few. We're doing a business case. Of course, the hub will only work if everybody makes money. And if you talk to some of the hubs that are existing here and elsewhere, there's always this underlying kind of accusation. There's the big company that buys off, and there's the smallholder farmer, and naturally the big guys take the small guys for a ride. Which is the case sometimes, but certainly not always. But if you do business cases for the producer, there could be somebody in the middle, does some aggregation or something, and then for the hub and say, no, if this works under these conditions, everybody makes money, then you have something that firm down to stand on. And it's very often that in these cases, specifically for the smallholder farmers, we don't do this business case thoroughly. And of course, then these accusations come. The off-taker has this fancy building, it's exporting, has big cars and everything, they make a fortune, while they give us nothing. The only thing to counter that is having proper figures, and of course, communication. Identifying hubs and the potential smallholder outgrower. Like I said, very important, modifying the model. Support some sort of monitoring, the regulations, the business model. In most cases, these things don't work because there is no proper communication. As I said, the smallholder farmer thinks, oh, these guys are making shitload of money, excuse me, because they're all fancy, but maybe they don't. And they are not really aware what they are making and what they have to do to make more money. So it's really this communication. If prices are changing, which they do all the time, it needs to be communicated. If quality, quantity requirements change, they need to be communicated. We need to link green and commercial.
And of course, we are also in the fundraising business. We want to do, and we are doing concepts which we then throw around for funding, which is both bank and development partners funding. And one output would be, which again is lacking very much, some sort of best practices that we can tell people, look, these are some guidelines, this is the do's and this is the don'ts. Just quickly again, yeah, the benefit of hub and spoke is there is a confirmed market for the producer, there is confirmed product for the buyer. The producer very often then gets access to improved technology, irrigation, seed, extension. There is a risk reduction for both sides. And there's an opportunity very important for commercializing smallholder farmers particularly, but we have a lot of A2 farmers who are kind of large-scale subsistence farmers. It is also for them an opportunity to commercialize, e.g. the citrus model we're working on. In the beginning, price, service, whatever other conditions are there, need to be clearly defined and explained. And just giving a farmer a piece of paper saying, look, I'll give you a bag of seed and you give me so much, is not explaining. And a piece of paper is not worth it anyway. So I think it's really very much a constant communication. And demonstrate that you cost share, demonstrate that you risk share. Farmers will be much more compliant and much more happy. Right, the next thing we're working on is what we call horticulture funding model. As I said earlier, and I think it's not only here horticulture, but specifically horticulture, and in horticulture, the long-term crops. When I go to the bank and ask for money for coffee and I say I need money for 5 years, if either they kick me out straight away or they just laugh at me. 5-year money, which is all the plantation crops, avocado, coffee, citrus, macadamia, what you need, it's just simply not available in this country. If it is available, the interest rates are extremely high and you need a brick and mortar collateral, house and borrow deal. Most smallholder farmers don't have a house and borrow deal, so they're excluded. As a matter of fact, and I'm sure you have read it, but the figures were confirmed by the Minister of Agriculture, there was this $25 million horticulture revolving fund. 0 has been dispersed. 0. Because the conditions are too high. One farmer for about 500,000 was kind of approved, but still hasn't got the money. And that's, quote, quite embarrassing. That's what the ministry says. So we have to come up with different funding models. As I said, funding is not accessible, not affordable, and not available. So most of the farmers simply don't get it. Don't get it as in can't access money. And I'm sure ZDT will confirm that. So what we are trying to do is, and what we're working on, and we have discussed this with the Minister of Agriculture, and they are quite happy about, is to have a funding model that's based on technical criteria. Abilities of the farmer and track record. For most farmers that are doing something, and again, it doesn't matter whether you do 1 hectare or 1,000 hectares, you have experts, we have experts in those fields. They go to the farm and they can see very quickly whether that farmer is serious or not. And then based on, and also realistic, if I have 50 coffee trees, excuse me if I use coffee too much, but anyway, if I have 50 coffee trees and I say I want to do 50,000 now in 2 years, then that's not realistic. But if I have 50 and I say I need a loan to put another 100 over 2 or 3 years, and that can be verified on the field. And that's really what we want to promote. And that the collection, the disbursement, and the monitoring of the fund would be safeguarded through people on the ground. That's the other thing very often is the banks in this country don't have agricultural expertise anymore and very complicated, and they don't really know. If I go to them and say, maybe for maize, they know that I wouldn't harvest 50 tons a hectare. But if I tell them I harvest 20 tons of coffee a hectare, they don't know. And of course, with those figures, my budgets are looking mint. But of course, I can't implement it. And that is really where we going or want to go to create a fund, makes funds available for farmers based on ability, based on track record, and then it's not depending on collateral. And that will very much depend on, one, the selection. that's realistic. The plans are realistic. And of course, it will be based on monitoring. So if a farmer gets 1 million for, I don't know, 50 hectares of blueberries, that money wouldn't be given in one go. It would be given, you know, your target for year one is 10 hectares. How much do you need for the 10 hectares? So the money would be given for the 10 hectares. If after 1 year the 10 hectares are planted, then more money will come. So by doing that, you keep monitoring, but also reduce the risk of default. Yeah. No, one further. So the objective is really to make money available based on technical ability, the farmers and farm potential, the impact, and very much the feasibility. Is this really realistic? Can it be done or can't it? It should be somehow an independent body, a trust or something sitting on the money, including stakeholders. As I said, the Minister of Agriculture is very keen. The disbursement would be based on benchmarks and vetting. The idea is really not to compete with anybody who is here at the moment in terms of banking, but to get more money into the sector. We're talking to some large banks and they're all having long ears. Whether that results in payments remains to be seen. Long-term, consistent, affordable, accessible funding. And yeah, ensure extra money coming in. So as I said, it's not competing with anybody here. I don't think the local banks would jump on this at this point in time, but you never know. Okay, that's it. There's our contacts. That's the office, Busche, myself. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Are there any questions for Michael or HDC? Maybe, Michael, are there any sort of practical examples of how the hub and spoke is working in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, we have a number of hubs that are working in all sectors. We have the very interesting citrus hub in Chibutu. There is also Nottingville and the usual announced the biofuels juicing plant that buys from smallholders. The coffee is a very interesting example because the coffee will buy from smallholders. Coffee will also provide some inputs and extension. There is a few smallholder horticultural things throughout the country which is working. And of course, Zimbabwe had the biggest ever outburst in Brazil state, which had 12,000 outbursts until mid-90s. But that's probably the prime of the list. It used to be the biggest, single biggest freshwater producer in sub-Saharan Africa. Over 12,000 outbursts around and they were producing high value vegetables for export.
Michael needs to speak up.
I need to.
He needs to come.
Okay. Where's this mic? Okay. So at this stage, if we can just make self-introductions, so that the speakers know who you are, and you all know who you are as well. Starting with Eunice, we just find our way around. Thank you.
My name is Eunice. Good afternoon. My name is Charlene Matunzi. I am from Amalubarina.
So,
I'm Sabina Haila. I'm from the Partner Funded Credit Growth and Development. My name is Barbara Mshanga. I'm coming from here.
Hi everyone, afternoon. My name is Namoda with help from Germany.
thank you.
Let's start currently with Mexico. Good afternoon.
Stevas from Green Missionary, working with school-scale farmers, helping them bridge the gap with machinery.
Good afternoon. I'm Pamela Mzenda. I'm from Adra, where we live and
Right. Godfrey.
Yeah, me, I'm Godfrey Kimera from ZADT. I am in finance. support, also we provide business development services. But I would like to talk about my work at Zimbabwe Development Bank in the early 90s sometime later on.
We'll get you up here.
In terms of financing horticulture.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know we financed horticulture there. I think about 95% of horticultural producers were financed by ZDB, Zimbabwe Development Bank, which is now Infrastructure and Development Bank of Zimbabwe. Then we had long-term funding. I just wanted to comment. Then we had long-term funding. We also had structured financing. So it managed to put infrastructure. So the kind of infrastructure that is needed obviously requires long-term funding. But not only that, also even the working capital required in horticulture needs to be structured and is usually provided on the back of the transaction itself. It can still be done. Some of us before we retire will witness that happening again.
Maybe we can do a forum and we can get you to come up and give us some solutions, Godfrey. Over to you.
Okay, so my name is Joseph. I work with Paris.
Right, let's go to the very back.
My name is Lucia. I'm with the Horticulture Development Council.
Thank you.
My name is from the Agricultural Partnerships Trust. Shabbat Group from World Vision, trying to support our farmers get better promotion protection.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Jackson Magesa from Neverest Advisors. We are into insurance and solutions. Inos Kawina, World Vision.
Melanie Asra, World Vision.
Mark Benzum, consultant with World Vision.
We know Michael.
Not World Vision.
Okay, my name is Nyasha Tabira. I'm Zimbabwe Farmers Union.
My name is Patrick Chibete. I'm from Zimbabwe Farmers Union.
Great to have ZFU here. So, thank you very much for that. Maybe, Charlene, would you like to come up and tell us of your living and working hub and spoke model? Thank you. So this thing's a bit tricky.
Okay.
It doesn't open up very widely.
Okay.
Just,
Okay, that's fine.
can you skip?
Yep,
Sorry.
no problem. Good afternoon, everybody. I introduce myself. I'm Charlene Matwanzi. I'm a farmer by profession. We farm in Kadoma. I currently farm on our family land. My father bought it in 1982, and we do beef cattle and sorghum and flowers for seed. So our company name is Amalubarina. Amaluva meaning flowers. Rina is the lady that taught my business partner and mentor how to grow flowers for seed production. So what we do basically as Amalubarina basically is, I give you a bit of a background. In 2011, we started with 40 outgrower farmers in Kai, raw area, growing flowers for seed. When I say flowers for seeds, I mean your zinnias, marigolds, and cosmos. So as you can see in this picture, it's cosmos seed with the two farmers in the field. So what we do is we get our seed from Holland. And what we do is actually seed multiplication for a seed company in Holland. So we do it with rural farmers in Gokwe and in Kai. So we started in 2011 with 40, and currently to date we have 884 growers in both areas. Go to the next slide. So just to, as I already talked about it, it's a very small company. We are farmers. Doug Alexander is the co-founder. He started to grow the flowers on a commercial basis in 1983. So flower seed production was happening in Zimbabwe, but on very few selected commercial farmers were doing flower seed production. And I came into work with Doug in 2008. And as I said, 2011, that's how we started. So in 2016, we met with APT and they helped us expand into Gokwe. So we were basically in Ward 1 and Ward 2 and in Kai. And through their help financially, as I keep going back to us being a small farming company, so our funds, we're self-funding it basically. So with the help of APT, we went into a new area, Gokwe and Jedele 3. And currently we started with 36 growers. In that area, currently we have 530 growers growing flower seeds for us. Just to highlight, some people ask why flower seeds. What we found with these flower seeds is they are drought tolerant and they also are compatible. They work really nicely with the smallholder farmers where the farmer grows their food crops like maize, sorghum, and then they have the flower seeds as a cash crop. So it doesn't really affect the food crop by growing the cash crop. They go hand in hand. And also what we noticed with like the cosmos seeds and the marigold seeds, when they do crop rotation, the flowers actually leave a bit of fertility in the soil that gives a benefit to the next maize crop coming in the next year. So it's a very good crop that helps and a good, and just to highlight about Gokwe. Gokwe is mainly a cotton growing area. So what we've noticed, I think, probably why the demand for flower seeds has probably gone up. I think what's happened with our model is because we're exporting and they get paid. It does take a long time for the farmers to get paid, but they get paid. They're finding more people are going away from cotton and coming towards us because they're guaranteed of getting paid. They know how much they're going to get paid when they start to grow the crop. So as I said, we've got 3 varieties mainly, Zinnia, Marigold, and Cosmos. So Zinnia's is $3 a kg, Marigold 4, and Cosmos. When I say a kg, they have to give us back clean seed. So the farmer grows the crop, looks after the crop, and also cleans the seed, and then we take it back as bags, and they know how much they're getting. So when they scale it and they know they can calculate, there is, because it's seed, there is purity and germination deducted. So it's taken us quite a long time, but I think our farmers now understand about the purity and the germination because at the end of the day, it's seed. It's not just flowers for ornamental, it's seed for a seed company that's going to distribute around the world. So we have to make sure that it's going to germinate and grow. So that's, and then just to highlight just one of our successes, in 2022, we had our highest amounts of growers, all total. We had, on our register, we had 1,060 growers. And from those 1,060 growers, we managed to do a payout of $67,000 cash into the areas of Gokwe and Kai. So just seeing that, I think on the first slide, you notice I put restoring economic dignity. When I say restoring economic dignity is when someone has cash, they're not, especially working in these rural areas, they're very reliant on government programs, on NGOs for seed or for inputs and stuff. But when they have their own cash, they have the ability to plan by themselves without anybody or a body telling them what to do. And that's what I mean by restoring economic dignity, by giving them that independence to choose what they want to do because they have the cash in hand. And that's what I think the flowers have done in the areas that we work in. So the next slide, please. Just to understand what we do, it's seed in the end. So the picture in the middle, that's Cosmos seed that you can see. So Holland normally give us our, say about a ton or so of seed. It comes in and we distribute November. We try to get it at the beginning of the farming season. So to get it out to the farmers by the latest, the 12th of December, each grower should have their packet of seeds. It's all rain-fed. That's why it works in the rural area. And that's why we work in Kai and Gokwe. It's rain-fed. As I said, drought-tolerant crop. It's how we say to the farmers when they ask how to grow the seeds. It's like how you grow your maize seed. Same way you do your lines, the same way you look after your maize seed. It needs to be weeded. We don't want blackjacks, mainly blackjacks, obviously, and we don't want, the advantage of using the smallholder farmer is that because for 1 kg seed, it grows 1/4 of a hectare, they can maintain that 1/4 of a hectare. It's not overwhelming. So for weeding, for looking after the crop, and for picking, Cosmos, you have to pick regularly. Zinnias is more forgiving, and Marigold is more forgiving, where you can pick once a week or twice a week. So we don't like to overwhelm. When we first started in 2011, we gave out large quantities, like 2 to 3 kgs, 4 kgs, and we saw that lots of the seed remained behind. We overwhelmed the farmer because we have to always remember that they have other crops, mainly their food crops. This is just a cash crop. So over the years, we've reduced the amount of seed that we've given each farmer. This year we've actually gone down even more, where we've given each farmer 250 grams of seed instead of, compared when we started from 2 kgs. And we're noticing that the less they can still get normally from like 500 kgs of seed, you're looking at 150 kgs the farmer can pick and get paid for. So this year's an experiment. We want to see it with 250 grams, will the farmers still get 150 kgs? But what we're noticing is there's lots of seed left over. So as I said, we do crop rotation. So in that maize crop, you can see the previous year's zinnias and cosmoses. So obviously, it's still overwhelming for the farmer to pick all the seeds. So we've reduced that. So we'll obviously know the results at the end of the season. So just as you can see, it's a very simple supply. We as Amalubarina get the seed from Holland. We put it into packets, distribution packets. A farmer can grow more than 1 variety. We normally try to give them a maximum of 2 varieties. So a Cosmos or a Zinnia, or a Cosmos or a Marigold. What we do try and encourage is we don't want farmers to say, I want this. We want them to, because unfortunately the market is Holland. And like for what's happened this year, due to COVID, which has never happened to us before, they've reduced the amount of seed that they've given us over the past years, because suddenly they have all the seed in their warehouses because everyone's gone back to work in Europe and their main markets. So luckily for us, we did cut the packets in half, so our growers weren't really affected. But if we hadn't cut our packets in half, we would have had to get rid of half the people in the contract, because the main contractor doesn't basically are saying we don't want as much seed as previous years. So just to give you an example, when I say as much seed, the year when we said we did really well, we delivered 30 tons of seed. And that's when we did the 67,000. So last year wasn't such a good farming year. We are affected by what happened with climate change. Last year it was mainly just rain, continuous rain. So most of the seeds was flooded, but they're forgiving. The farmer still gets a harvest. That's the beauty of the flower seeds, is that even though you don't get as much, you get something. So I think that's probably why we still get farmers demanding to join the program. So next slide. So how our model works. So to have 1,000 growers, and as I said, the company is just me and Doug, the farmers are basically the main drivers of this program. So each farmer has to be part of a farming group. So the group leader is actually selected within the community. So remember we said we grow seeds. So within zinnias, you've got different varieties of zinnias. So the geographical area is very important. So when we're distributing seed, we distribute a certain type of zinnia in one area. It can't mix with a different area, because otherwise it'll be cross-pollination and we've destroyed the program and we can't export that seed. So the farmers being the main part, they have to also govern themselves. So they have to govern themselves that they're not giving seeds to their cousins or to their aunts who can be in the next village. Because it is zinnia, but for instance, we've got different varieties, over 5, zinnia dahlia, zinnia lilliput, zinnia cactus. So we have to keep it pure. So the group leader is the one that monitors and evaluates the growers, and the group leader is a farmer himself. So so basically how we do it, obviously this helped with APT, is that each group leader has a cell phone. So with monitoring, I live in Kadoma, and they are 250 Ks away. So monitoring evaluation, WhatsApp, a very important communication tool that they use on germination, on weeding, and then instead of trying to go every 2 weeks, you're going after maybe a month or so as like the overseer. And with 1,000 growers, you can't see everybody. So with 1,000 growers, we have 23 group leaders. So the 23 group leaders are manageable for us to communicate with and for us to identify problems. So that's how this model works. We are really, the farmers and the guys growing the flower seeds are the ones that actually own the program. And they understand that if there's contamination, it kills the program. They've understood that over the years, I think. So yeah, so that's where we are a bit lucky, I think, and why we can continue doing this program. Next slide. What we've basically achieved is, I think, we've achieved rural farmers growing for export, and where people think smallholder farmers, how do you get the smallholder farmers to grow for an export company? This is it. They grow flower seeds for Holland, and we've achieved that, starting off very slowly, very limited finance, but it's doable. It's doable to get smallholder farmers to grow cash crops and to get them to export. And there's more interest in it. So we basically, what we've done also last year, we thought, because as I said, the flower seeds take a very long time. They grow them in December, just like a maize crop. It dries, they pick July, they bagging, we're weighing, it goes off on the ship, maybe September, they get paid in November. So that's like a whole 10 months to 11 months waiting for payment. So what we try to introduce also is, we've introduced last year, 2023, we introduced sunflower, which is also a drought-tolerant crop. And we sell that to a local market. So last year we managed to distribute sunflower seed, giving each farmer 1 hectare. And this also gives them an income in June. Instead of them waiting the 10 months, we're trying to break it up where they get income regularly. And so we managed to deliver over 100 tons to the local market. So we're still trying to introduce new seeds. Our new crop this year is chia. We are trialing that out before we find the market, but we're trying to think maybe chia can be something that they can add, and it's also compatible with the flowers. Next thing. Challenges. We're a small private company. We're farmers. My job is farming. So the funds that we use to fund the program are from the farm. So that's a challenge when you need to get airtime for your group leaders. You're trying to sell cattle to do that. So it's still, we're getting to a point where it is giving us money back, but we're still a long way from being efficient. So we need more technology in the area to equip the farmers better, for them to be better farmers and better growers, but we're limited because we are a small private company using farm money to finance this. Also, I put storage facilities. It's when farmers, because you've got 1,000 growers, you've got people harvesting and being ready at different times. So what we do is farmers normally keep their seed until we have everybody together for us to call a 30-ton truck in. So you have problems where the seed is attacked by mice, by birds, because one farmer could have started, be ready in June, and the truck is only coming in September. So storage facilities out in the rural area is a big thing, but that's also a big need. And then, as I said, I think I mentioned that earlier, growing for one market also makes us vulnerable. So we grow for, the company that we grow for is Hem Genetics. It's one of the biggest seed producers in Europe. But as they said, we're limited by what they say. If they decide that they don't need us, then it also can kill the program. That's why we're trying to introduce new seeds and new crops, so we're not vulnerable just to one company, even though they have supported us since 2011 and previously with Doug in the 80s when he used to grow for them. So that's Amalubarina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No. So, Michael, you mentioned best practice in contract farming in your presentation, and I was picking out best practice as Charlene was going along. So I just thought I'd share. Charlene and Doug, who is not here today, are passionate. They're passionate about communities, and this did not make them any money. I'm glad you're making a little bit of money now, but it didn't make them money for years. And yet they were out there every season, encouraging farmers and moving this thing along until over 1,000 farmers last year. So very development-focused people. And it's farmer-owned. The farmers, they see this opportunity, they grab it, and they're productive, even under some really trying climatic conditions.
Yes.
I think the other thing that I got was it's a low cost, low return model.
Yes.
So Charlene, when she goes out into the field, she'll take a couple of bags of mealie meal and she'll stay in the household of one of the women farmers. And sometimes she'll break down on the way because she doesn't have a fancy car.
No.
So the costs are really, really low. And it's commendable that you managed to do that. The other best practice, I think, is on the side marketing side. It's difficult to side market flower seed.
Yeah.
There's not a huge number of opportunities there, and so you manage to retain a lot of the production that farmers produce. Maybe there's some other ones, but I just thought I'd highlight those. Charlene, have you seen any side marketing on the sunflower?
Yes. So that's the challenge with the sunflower. The sunflower, because you have different players in the sunflower field. So even though we gave the farmers the seed to grow the sunflower, the timing, basically, if a marketer comes in with a higher price, they'll sell to the highest bidder. So what we're trying to do is, what I didn't mention is, I think because it's taken us a long time to grow, we've tried to establish trust with our farmers. As I said, it's also their program. So I think that's actually been a really good thing for us, where we don't have that much side marketing because we have the trust. They feel that they are Amalubarina. So they feel that even though I'm offering 2 or 3 cents less than Zim Gold or the big companies, they will still bring what they did for Amalubarina, because you do actually leave the program if you are caught side marketing and are caught doing things that are not part of the contract. They all each get contracts, so they understand the model from the beginning. So I think over the years, the people that have been ejected out have wanted to come back in, and that's helped us keep it trustworthy. I think that's the way it is. The buy-in from the farmer is quite big.
Charlene, and you said the reduction in quota from the Dutch company was a blessing in disguise.
It was.
First of all, it was a bit of a shock, but then how was it a blessing?
So every year, the Dutch company would ask us to increase. So what happens when you increase, and when you give a blanket amount of seed, you get people that don't produce. You get the non-performers, but because you have the seed, you give it out. So it was a shock to us first of all. But what we managed to do is, I think I use the word cull because I'm a farmer, but we got rid of 250 growers. So we were basically carrying 250 growers that got seed, which is an expense because we buy the seed, and they didn't produce anything. So Amalubarina got an expense of 250 kgs of seed that wasn't multiplied, that we had to pay for. So by reducing us, it also helped us to eliminate and to take out all the hanger-oners or every time there's a program introduced, everybody wants to grow, but not everybody is a flower grower. And I think in our areas, people understand that just because it's a program, you don't have to always go for it. And that's one of the big things. And then, so it is actually a positive in a way, because we've managed to do that. So hopefully everyone will produce this year.
I just remembered another best practice. You started small, 40 farmers.
Yes.
A lot of companies or a lot of maybe NGOs promoting contract farming dive in the deep end.
Yeah.
And there's just too many farmers and it's too much to handle.
Yeah.
But you guys started small and
Yeah.
gradually built it up to what it is today.
So basically how, when we say the group leaders are in charge, so basically it's because the group leader lives in the community. So when someone wants to join the program, they have to go to the group leader, and then the group leader knows that this person is always in town. He's never in the field. This person's always, so it didn't just grow to 1,000 growers. It took a lot of times of not just the group leader, the farmers themselves within the group also vet the next person coming within the group. I always say, I use the word in Shona Munyai, you have to be the one to say, are you correct? Because then if the new grower doesn't work, the blame goes to the group leader and not to the new grower, because you're the one that said, yes, this person can grow. So how the group leaders also get rewarded is the amount of kgs they produce, they get an incentive at the end of the year, but on a sliding scale. So the more you produce, the more you get. The less you produce, you'll still get something, but not as much. So it's to their advantage to put good producers in their group so they can get more at the end of production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'd like to open it up to some questions. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to find out if there are any plans to expand other districts or you have enough challenges incorporated.
So the beauty of this, we're not the only farming group that grows for hemp genetics in Zimbabwe. We have another outgrower in Murewa, and I think, I'm not too sure of the areas. And then also we have another company also growing in Chinoi, and may not using our exact same model, but growing for hemp genetics, the same company. So for me to expand into different areas, no, I'm kind of within Kadoma and in Kayangokwe because the challenges are really small, and yeah, that's the major thing.
Mm-hmm. Jane.
Hi, I was just going to ask you if you had any gender or age breakdown of your growers. I mean, is it all elderly women, or have you got?
So when we started, it actually started with more elderly women, and I'd like to say it's more of like a family orientated, because I think I got asked this question when APT joined. They wanted how many women, how many male. So what I've noticed is with us, it's the family. So it's father, mother, and the children picking during the school holidays. Very much more predominantly older women when it started, but the past 3 years, more young males have been joining. And the thing is, it's males joining to grow, but the person actually doing the work is actually the female. So remember when we clean the seed, the winnowing, that's a very important thing. So it's very hard. On your register, you'll have the husband or the partner, but when you go out to do monitoring and evaluation, the person that you actually see in the fields is the wife or the kids. And so it's I don't know how to differentiate that.
More young farmers involved.
Yes, there are more young farmers that have come in. I think in the past 3 years, more young farmers. Initially, they weren't interested, but then lots of more young farmers have definitely come into the program.
So. Another question was, does your company in Holland see you as part of their social responsibility or as a commercial partner?
I'm not sure. I think a commercial partner, I don't think they see us as social responsibility. I think it's definitely, it's very cash orientated. There's no donations from Holland. It's we pay this, they give us this. It's not a social responsibility, no.
But having said that, when they come out to Zimbabwe and they tour your farmers, they get quite excited.
Yeah, they do. The thing is they do come out once a year to come and see, because it's seed, they need to see the colors and everything. So I think the farmers do get excited when the company does come, but yeah, I will actually ask them that because maybe they are using.
They're advertising to say they're social responsibility.
I should check the website actually because they are. So yeah, I didn't think about that, but they could be using the farmers for that because it is a social responsibility in a way. But yeah.
Rodney.
I just thought I could help Shalini respond to the figures. We have been tracking the work with Shalini. I think it's over 60% women that are participating in all of the years that we work together. The other thing that I found interesting, as much as there are delays in payment, 10 months, the money comes just in time before the next season, around November, July. So it's used appropriately for the next season. We've tried to add honey, but Kai wasn't the best place to diversify. But I think
we haven't given up. We still, because we do flowers, it just makes sense to have honey also as another product for them. But we're still working on that, and we haven't given up on the honey. So hopefully that happens. So just to also expand on Rodney, because the money comes end October, beginning of November, it's not big amounts per each individual household. But what it does is most farmers, what they do is they buy their inputs for the new season on time. So they're not waiting for inputs. So you can see maize production has actually gone up in the area because the farmer can control, I'm going to grow this amount because of the money from flowers. They can buy all the inputs and be on time when the rain starts. So that's what I've noticed with that program, just to expand on what Rodney was saying.
Edson.
What is the cost of production?
So the cost of production, can I send that to you? It's a very low cost. So basically, the packet of seed, what we do is we encourage farmers to use cow manure. So we encourage them to do good agricultural practices. So basically, June, July, with the help of APT, they came in and taught farmers cultivation, farming with conservation farming. So what we do is we encourage them to start preparing their fields after they've harvested. So use cow manure, use what you have. So use cow manure, put it in the field June, July. It's degraded enough and it's ready. So because they grow 1/4 hectare, the cost is the seed and the cow manure, the labor, and the cost of it is also the family cost of weeding, labor, weeding and keeping it, and then also cleaning. They do that. They do the cleaning. So cost mainly is their labor. That's the main cost because they have to weed, they have to pick, and then we provide the bags. So the cost is the cost of the seed, which is $3 a packet. So what they buy the seed for and what they sell it for is the same price. So if you get 500 grams of zinnia and we're buying it for $3, your cost is $1.50 to grow that seed.
So Eunice, I think.
Gross margins here, we're looking at about 130.
He's got, yeah.
138 to 140, depending on the variety. I know we try to have compound added, but farmers can't afford it. So the 140, 138 includes compound D, which is the unique cost. Then we're looking at about profit per hectare of 500 for the best farmers. But farmers hardly grow a hectare, it's 1/4 hectare because picking is a huge.
It's intense.
So it's more viable to grow 1/4 hectare, depending on the labor that is applying.
Thank you. So Eunice and then Melanie.
Thank you very much. Judging from the size of the land itself, for the volumes of the output and all that, I assume all the operations are kind of manual.
Yes.
From the seed managing the 1/4 of a hectare to harvesting.
Yes.
Any chance of mechanizing that?
If we can get a low cost, I'm sure everything. We've tried to, initially before, we used to actually take the seed not 100% clean, and we tried to use a machine called the clipper. But we found that the farmers clean it way better than the clipper. And then because we get charged for germination and purity, the cleaner the seed, the better the money. So if our percentage of purity is low, that means we get less money. So we gave it back to the farmers. So if we could find something where it's less labor intensive, especially on the cleaning, we have given out sieves, different numbers, number 1 and 2, which have helped, but it's not mechanical. It's all very laborious. So it is a bit of a challenge. So it is something that we would be interested in looking at.
Maybe 2 short ones. What is the added value for the farmer? Is there any opportunity to grow higher? So, one question: are they growing out of poverty at a certain stage? Is there a chance? Because you say it's mainly planting, harvesting, waiting for money for a very long time, which is always a bit ridiculous for the Europeans. And then they are getting enough to input again. So what is the win, number one? And then I had a question about accountability. So you explained already based on your question that there is a risk of you are not producing the quality, and then you have that contract which shows it's not social corporate, that you are getting less money out of it if the quality is not at the minimum standard. So who is bearing that accountability if your farmers are not producing according to their standards? Is it you holding that single contract in the company?
Yeah. So because we have the contract with Holland, we bear the accountability. So that's how we also then, with those results, we then say, sorry, you can't grow with us this year. So that's why finance is a challenge, because we're financing it, and then we get prosecuted for not getting to the right percentages, and it's a cost to us and not to the farmers. So what we do is we try select and deselect farmers. And then the benefits to the farmer is, I don't know if it's grown out of, I think we did have out of poverty, like that's what was the main thing. But I think what the benefit is that they have the ability, when they do get that cash in the 10 months time or whatever, as I said, I think I go back to the whole thing of buying maize and stuff like that. So what the benefit is that they're food secure. So when, as Michael said, when I go out to do monitoring evaluation, I live with a host family in the village, and I'm there for 2 weeks or so. So what they use, I think all you guys know, is they use maize as barter trading to buy soap, for school fees, So what I've noticed over the years that we've been there, with the flowers, they're food secure because they're not taking the maize to now barter trade. They've had this flower money to pay for school fees, to buy the groceries. Because normally what they do is when they get the payment, they go to Gokwe and they buy cases of sugar, cases of soap, and all that stuff. And that's for the year set. So you're keeping them food secure. That 1 ton in that house for the year is there. It's not being dilapidated where someone has to go buy soap, buy sugar, pay school fees. They've used the cash to do that, and the family is food secure. That's what I noticed.
When I first met Charlene's partner, Doug, he was very candid to say, look, this is not going to make anyone a fortune.
No.
You might get the same return as a maize crop in that area. He said, but what it does give them is a cash crop. They don't have any other cash crops, and this is the only way that they can earn cash. So it has a great deal of value. I don't think anyone's going to grow out of poverty from growing to 0.25 hectares of flower seed, but it will help them to maintain their lifestyle. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so Mike, from what you're saying, because I was listening, it makes a lot of sense then to have other crops. You know, I mean, this is what happened. You know, the floriculture industry here, was based out of, the tobacco industry. Most of those that started floriculture were also in tobacco. So you have the switch on cash flows. So you have your tobacco selling season, tipping off, and then you have flower income coming. So for me, it makes a lot of sense if you can introduce. I heard you talk of sunflower.
Yes, and then we're starting out with chia.
I was going to ask you a question when you said they are coming out of cotton. Because for me, that's not a very good idea unless they are switching on to something.
So
when you spoke of sunflower and sesame, then I said, well, yeah, maybe let me not ask. But it makes a lot of sense if they can, because they are not obviously going to grow out of poverty by doing this. I was doing a simple calculation here. You talked of 67,000?
Yes.
But I'm also looking at the number of growers. Yeah, so they're definitely not going to come out of poverty from there. So something else needs to be done.
Yes.
Yes, and the dream I need, I've gone out in the food during the blooming season around February, March. It's beautiful to see these variety of flowers. I'm thinking, how about with the drive of rural tourism?
Could be.
We could identify 1 or 2 homes that could become sort of rural tourism models, and where I know huge marketing has to go in, and we have to get experts to develop that concept. But I think that can bring in more development. Looking at what happened to Terry in Monroe, I'm thinking with the flowers, it's really beautiful. Then when Eunice asked about mechanization, I remember 2 years ago we experimented with the thresher,
Yes.
kilogram. How did the seed come out?
It came out very clean. It came out very clean, yeah, purity. That was actually our highest producing group that used the thresher. I forgot about the thresher. Yeah, they did, and they used that to clean their zinnia seeds. Yeah, they did that. Thank you.
Anyway, thank you. I've been very inspired by Charlene over the years, seeing you guys and how you've progressed. So thanks
Thank
very
you.
much for coming to share
Thank you.
your story.
Yeah. How do I get this off?
Okay, just a few announcements. Please, if you haven't, could you sign the register at the back? Our next forum in February will be looking at food security. So we'll be having FuseNet and then PHI commodities from the private sector angle. We're also having our AGM, so please attend that and pay your subs before then so that you can participate as a voter. I think that brings us to the end of today's forum. So thanks very much for your attendance and hope to see you next month.